Hi, it's Andy, and today I'm bringing you my November wrap-up. Again, I know I say this every wrap-up, but how? Like every wrap-up in TBR, how is it November? How? How is it the end of November now? Like today that I'm filming this is the 30th of November. It's about to be December. Where's the year gone? Why is my hair doing this? Anyway, we continue. It is freezing outside, hence why I've got this nice cozy jumper on. And I had a fairly good reading month this month. And I've got quite a few things to get through, so I'm just going to jump right into this, especially since I need to get this video up for tomorrow. All in all, I read 16 books, and on top of that I DNF'd 2, which took me to a grand total of 6,502 pages, which is about 300 off what I read last month, so that's not so bad. That is also not including the almost 300 pages that I've read of Ordinary Monsters, which I have started, but I'm only like, it's like 600 and something pages long, and I'm only 280, 290-ish pages through it, so not including it at all in this wrap up. It'll go in next month's wrap up. So yeah, I've actually read roughly what I've read last month, so that's quite good going. The first book I read was The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas by John Boyne. I got the audiobook of this from my library because it's one of those books that has been on my TBR for so long that I needed some kind of kick up the butt to read it. So I read it alongside the audiobook, and I knew what this book was going to be about because I've seen the movie. I actually think I maybe prefer the movie. I think the format fits it really well. But as a sort of middle grade desk, younger end of YA type book, I think this is really good in the sense of historical fiction. So it's about Bruno, who is a child of a Nazi officer, and his dad gets sent to Auschwitz to be in charge of it, not to like go to it. And while there, Bruno is like, what the hell's going on? He's got the sister who's old enough that she doesn't want anything to do with him. He doesn't necessarily like the soldiers that are there. His mum's really stressed, and he's like, something's not right. And his window views out onto Auschwitz, and he's like, what are those people doing there? Why are they wearing pyjamas? Like, what's going on? And what he thinks and what he believes as a young boy doesn't match up with things that the soldiers are saying. Like, the soldiers obviously dehumanise the prisoners and things like that, and Bruno as a young boy is like, I don't understand why you're saying these people aren't people. And he also kind of befriends the servants that are brought in, slaves really, that are brought in from the camp to serve the family. And he's like, well, they're really nice to me, so I think they're nice people. And then obviously he's disavowed of those notions by the schmatzy officers who tell him that these people are not people. Bruno then befriends Shmuel. I'm probably totally butchering that because I can't do I can't do words right now. I've got an ulcer on my tongue and I'm really sorry, but Shmuel is a Jewish boy who is in Auschwitz, and Bruno befriends him at the fence, and they talk and kind of play at the edge of this fence, each on their own side. And then Bruno decides that he wants to help Shmuel find his father, who's gone missing in Auschwitz. And so he gets him to get a set of the pyjamas, which is the uniform, and he gets under the fence and goes in with them. And spoilers if you haven't read the rest of this book or seen the movie, I'll hold my hand up until, the spoilers are gone. So obviously being in with these people that are in Auschwitz and in the uniform, Bruno is mistaken for one of the prisoners, and they're all ushered into the showers, which, as we all know from history, is where they exterminated the Jews, in these showers that were it was just mass murder. So yeah, and Bruno's dad then sort of works out eventually what happened to his son and hits a pit of despair, which, the dad deserved it, the son did not. Spoilers over. Yeah, this book is quite it's quite dark, but also really well done for it being a children's book. Like, it'll help introduce children to kind of the basics of Auschwitz and concentration camps and the injustice of it all, which is just baseboard sort of knowledge. I could talk about World War II and everything around it for hours, so I'm just going to stop now. Next, I read Hopeless by Elsie Silver. This follows Bo, who is the second oldest of the Eaton boys. So yeah, it goes Cole, that's terrible, I can't remember the names. I think it's Cole, and then Bo, and then Rhett, and then Jasper's kind of like same age as Bo, but Jasper's kind of adopted into the family. Anyway, Bo decides when he's younger that he wants to go into the army, and he goes into like special forces, and he goes on these like clandestine missions and things like that. And in Powerless, the book before, we know that Bo has gone missing, and then when he's found, he is not in a good state. And this is kind of going back and seeing Bo and what happens to Bo. Well, not what happens to Bo, he does discuss it, but it goes back to a scene from Theo's book, Reckless, where he's quite rude, Bo is quite rude to Winter. And so it goes back to that and kind of his mentality through that. You see that he's struggling a lot with PTSD and survivor's guilt and the things that you would expect from someone who's gone missing in somewhere like Iraq or Afghanistan behind enemy lines. And he's kind of dealing with that while at the same time everybody in his family's kind of coupling up or has coupled up and is having kids, and he's kind of feeling a bit like, ugh. He then takes up at this bar whose server is from a family who are the wrong side of the tracks. And honestly, to be fair, it's not even wrong side of the tracks. Like, her family's just trash. Her dad is currently in jail or hiding from being put in jail. Her brothers should be in jail, in my opinion. And she lives in a beat up kind of motorhome by the edge of their land, next to Bo's land. And they kind of strike up a conversation while in the bar, and she's like, yeah, everybody treats me like trash because of my family. And he's like, well, I don't think you're trash. And she's like, yeah, Golden Boy Eaton, sure. She was like, I'm sure if I had your name, everybody would treat me like a queen. And he was like, bet. And she's like, I'm sorry, what? And he's like, I'll give you my name and we'll see how people treat you. And so they kind of make this really weird bet where they get fake engaged, and then it's really just them kind of getting to know each other a bit better. Like, there's quite a decent age gap in it, because Bo is in his 30s and she's in her 20s, like mid to late 30s, and she's in like her early 20s. And it's such a good, I think this one was actually possibly my favourite, because the way that Bo was handled and the way that his injuries and things were handled was really, really, really good. And it's because the author has had the same injury and so knows more about the physical side of it. And she spent time with war veterans who have things like PTSD, survivor's guilt. She spent time with them, asking them questions about it, interviewing them about it, talking to them about it, and brought that into the story, let them read the draft so that they could tweak it, so they could say like what they thought. Like, she actually really does a lot of due diligence. I knew I wasn't going to get that the first time. She does a lot of due diligence when it comes to these stories, because she wants to handle these serious things with compassion. And then our female main character, again, whose name I cannot remember because I'm terrible at character names, she comes from this horrible, horrible family, and all she wants to do is better herself. And kind of being with Bo kind of helps with that, like, not in the sense that he is her hero. Like, they do have to spend time apart to heal, which I do again like that Elsie Silver does that, but Bo truly respects her and truly believes in her, and it's the first time that somebody has. And the fact that the Eatons just take her on, like, yep, yeah, okay, like, we also think you're good enough. Like, the fact that people think she's good enough gives her that confidence. And I just love this story so much. It was at the start of the month that I read it, and I read it in one sitting, and I love it. And honestly, I need to read them all because I can't remember too much. But it was just, I love that book so much. I think it was my favourite, possibly my favourite Elsie Silver. Next, we went back to World War II, and that is An Island at War by Deborah Kerr. This is based in the island of Jersey in the English Channel, and during World War II, at some point, Jersey was occupied, and so this is about the time of Jersey's occupation. This goes between it kind of goes between two sisters. So one who is older stays with her family on the island, and the younger one is sent off to the mainland to sort of get away from the Nazis. And it's just about the time on this island while it is occupied. It's quite a low-key book, so it's like, although there are Nazis and although obviously like terrible things are happening, things on the island are quite, like, the Nazis kind of act like they're there for a holiday, not for conquest, and the people there are trying to rebel but not trying to have all-out war on their, you know, small isolated island. And it's just, I honestly don't know how to describe this one, because it really is just, it feels like a low stakes book, but it's high stakes, and I don't know if that's explaining it very well, but the writing style is very, like, chilled. Very, like, the character herself is very, like, calm and calculating while all this is going on. She's like, right, how do we make the smart move? And I love this. And this is based on, like, true events of these islands being occupied. And obviously the liberation later on. And yeah, I just did not think I was going to like this as much as I did. But I really, really appreciate having this. And you also get snippets of the sister that is in London. And obviously she's kind of seeing what's happening with the Blitz and things like that as well. So although she is supposed to be safer, she doesn't necessarily mean that she is safer. If that makes sense. I'm going to stop talking about this. Then I read Gore Details by Erica Engelhaupt. And this is really, really what it sounds like. So it is different short story, essay style things about gory details and taboo subjects. So it talks about things to do with decomposition, maggots, flies, your pets eating you after you die. But it also deals with plagues and just gross things about the human body that people don't really like to talk about. There was some that even, like, I was like, you know, and it's just, it was so interesting. I really, really enjoyed this. It was very, very educational in a fun and accessible ways. It's like, to me, it was almost like an adult's horrible history, if that makes sense. Like, that's what it felt like, was like an adult horrible history. And I really appreciate that. And it's really, really obvious that Erica Engelhaupt is just, like, fascinated by these things that normal people are like, ugh, like, let's just stay as far away from that as possible. Which I appreciate, because I really enjoy some of the weirder sides of science. So yeah, if you can stomach things like this, I would really recommend this. And it's one of those things that I didn't know that I needed. Next, I read Vampire Most Wanted by Lindsay Sands. This is, I've lost count of which book it is in my vampire series, but this follows Basha, who is a family member of the Arjanews who's thought to have died years and years, I'm talking millennia ago. But that's not quite so. And so Lucian has sent Marcus, who is the cousin of Christian, if we all remember where we were before, because I've not read these in a while, who was kind of protecting Christian. He protected Julius when he was younger, and then he protected Christian when he was younger, and now he's kind of at a loose end. And he's like, look, let me help you. So he goes to this circus to look for Basha, who is posing as a medium, not a medium, like, or a psychic, like the crystal ball, I can't remember what they're called, but like, she tells your not quite future. And the way she does it is she uses the ability that they have to read minds, and she either reads the people around them or that person themselves and tells them what they want to hear, or conclusions that they may have come to that they don't want to admit to. There was one where she told, for example, a woman that her husband was cheating on her, or that he was planning to kill her, because she could read that from his mind, and she was like, you need to leave him. And the husband, you know, retaliates, because of course he does. And Marcus is just kind of trying to figure out who she is, and if she's Basha, and if she is a rogue like they suspect. And yeah, you get to kind of follow up from what happened with what was it, Dari's story, all those books back. I really, really enjoyed this. It was, from memory, it wasn't one of my favourites, but on reread I appreciate it a lot more, and I don't know why. Then I read Warrior Queens and Quiet Revolutionaries by Kate Moss. This is a non-fiction by Kate Moss about women in history, and it is basically an info dump of women in history. This is not an in-depth look at women in history. This is a jumping off point. This has over 1,000 women noted within its pages, and it goes by sections. So it goes by science, and it goes by writers, inventors, all these different sections where women actually had a very prominent role, and a lot of the time it was quashed by men, even down to things like certain Nobel Prizes where the men that were awarded them actually stole or utilised the work of the women who'd done it before them and put their own stamp on it and called it something new. Not that that ever happens nowadays. And like I said, this has over 1,000 women mentioned in it, all interspersed with stories about Kate herself discovering her, I can't remember if it's a great-grandmother or her grandmother, Lily, I want to say great-grandmother, but I can't remember, who she knew very little about, but kind of dug into and looked at old records and diaries. She found diaries and letters and started to learn about this woman who she was related to but knew nothing about. And some of these people in history, either Lily, her great-grandmother, knew or knew of potentially, and Kate was making all these like connections, and it was just, as a memoir, it was really, really interesting. And then, like I say, it's a jumping off point to then do your own research about these women, because there's not enough pages to get through all these women. But Kate just could not whittle it down. She wanted to highlight them all. And that, like, Kate is such a girl's girl. She is a woman's woman. She's one of the founders of the Women's Prize for Fiction. And she loves to write stories about women, about strong women, about different kinds of women, because women are not just one thing. And I really appreciate this just so much. I wanted to Google until my head burst. Next, I read Off to the Races by Elsie Silver. This is the first in the series that's set before the other series, the Flawless and all that series. And this one follows Billy, who is a horse trainer, and her partner, her enemies to lovers type thing. And I cannot remember his name. That's terrible. But he owns this ranch. His grandfather recently passed and handed over the ranch to him in his will. And it's a racehorse ranch, so they raise and race racehorses. And it turns out his grandfather had been, fixing races. And it all sort of comes down on him. I want to say his name's Hunter. I'm probably wrong. I should really look this stuff up before I start filming, I tell you. But he wants to turn around the reputation of the place and get the place up and running, because as a child, after his father died, he kind of saw that place as a home. It is the place where he was raised. It was the place where he had all these happy memories with his grandfather. And so he hires this man, Hank, who was a friend of his grandfather's, to run the place, and he wants to hire Billy, who is the horse trainer. He thinks that Billy's a man. Billy turns up, Billy's a woman, and they start off on the worst foot. He thinks that she's been sent by his mother to seduce him into having grandbabies, and he is very, very rude to her until she's like, "Hi, I'm your new horse trainer." And he's like, "What?" And so, yeah, they butt heads immediately. And he gives her this horse to train that is just basically like untrainable. Nobody wants to go near him. Everybody is terrified of this thing because he just will absolutely take you out. And Billy's like, "Fine, I'll get him ready to race in the next race we have," which is a few months away because of the ban from the fixing races thing. And yeah, she works with this horse and does an amazing job, obviously. And in the meantime, they kind of like get to know each other, and it's an enemies to lovers or hate to love type thing, And yeah, it's just your typical Elsie Silver romance novel, and I love it. It deals with so much more than just the romance and starts off this whole other series. And then basically I binged the entire series. So the next one was a photo finish, which is Violet's story, and Violet ends up with Cole, who is the older brother of the guy from the first one. But Violet is also the sister of the Eaton brothers from the other series. So there's the link there. And she is this young up-and-coming jockey, and he is the, again, second owner of this place. And again, really about them getting to know each other. He is a soldier and kind of like Beau, and has dealt with something really horrible during his time as a soldier that he has not told his family about. and it doesn't get revealed until much later in the book, so I'm not going to spoil it just in case. But he's dealing with a lot and trying to sort of recover from that mentally, physically, and staying at the ranch while all that's happening, getting to know Violet just kind of by accident, because she has an accident on the horse. One of the horses like chucks her. Not the horse's fault, by the way, someone else's fault. And as she's recuperating, she's staying at the house with him, and he feels responsible for her, so he's looking after her, and she's kind of seeing the softer side to him than the grumpiness that he always gives everybody else. So it's like a grumpy sunshine romance, and I just love these two. And there's another horse as well. Like, Violet gets given a horse by Billy, and she's like, you need to, like, you do the training, you do all the work with her, you know. And so Cole ends up, after being like, I hate horses, ends up helping her look after this little filly, and I love the horse. Like, the horse has got so much personality, and it just shows how well, like, the interactions between the horse and Cole just show how horses can help so much with mental health and things like PTSD, and just animals, honestly, we don't deserve them. Next is a photo finish, which is Mera and Stefan's story. Now, Stefan is kind of the villain throughout the first 2 books, and Stefan is the owner of a rival ranch, and during calving season, as Mera is the vet, she goes over to help with one of his horses, as well as helping with the horses on the ranch that she works at, which is Billy and Cole and all that, their ranch. And unfortunately, and there are like trigger warnings in the front of these books, at Billy's horses, the mother dies and the horse is left over, like the baby horse is left like motherless. And then on Stefan's ranch, the baby dies and the mother is left babyless. What are baby horses called? Calves? Anyway, and obviously Mera's like, well, although this is a terrible thing, we have a baby, you have a mum. And so she brings the baby over to Stefan's ranch, and they, work to get the horses to bond. That goes great, and she spends a lot of time going back and forward, looking after this horse, and he's very hands-on with his business, so he'll muck out the horses himself. He gets really attached to this horse, this baby, and he wants it, he wills it to survive, and Mera's there all the time because it's very sickly, and it's just the pair of them caring for this horse, and Mera realising that Stefan is not just this horrible, he puts up this front of being quite horrible, whereas he's actually a cinnamon roll, and she learns that and starts to sort of fall for him, despite the fact that her best friend Billy absolutely hates him, and I mean hates him, you have no idea. And yeah, it's kind of about bringing the 2 ranches together, not as one ranch, but the groups together, because it then introduces Stefan's sister as well, who was previously in the homes of Stefan's parents. It was a horribly abusive marriage, and his sister ended up getting left there because he was sent away to boarding school, and although he fought to try and get her back once he became an adult, it wasn't until his parents died that she was then shipped off to other relatives, and then when she turned 18 she came to live with him. And it's about them healing, about him healing, about him and Mera together, and everybody just learning to sort of give everybody a chance. That sounds so vague and so stupid, but I really, really can't think about how to... Elsie Silver just doesn't just do romance. There's so many layers to it that I could just go on about for hours, but I don't have time for that, so talk to me about it later. And the final one in that is A False Start, and this is about Stefan's sister, again, whose name I cannot remember for the life of me. And Griffin, who is Stefan's kind of only friend at one point, and Griff used to be a celebrity, he was a quarterback of a football team, and then had too many head injuries and tired, and kind of went into this whole... And Nadia is the sister's name, so it's about him and Nadia. Again, massive age gap, not massive age gap, again he's in his late 30s, she's early 20s, and it's about them together. And again, they spend there's this excellent portion of this book where they don't split up, because they're in a secret, there's a whole secret thing going on with them for a while. They like each other, but they won't admit to it, and won't admit to other people and stuff like that, and he's trying to teach her how to ride a horse, and it's It's a whole thing. But at one point they realise that they have to heal separately, and so they go their separate ways, but they still have that connection, and it's just so beautiful. I could go on about these books forever, but I'm not gonna. But yeah, Age of That Romance, just love it. Next up is the one that I think we all know I read this month, and that is Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. And yes, I also tapped this one. Iron Flame is the sequel to Fourth Wing, and so this is, I can't really say much about this, it's a follow-on from Fourth Wing. Fourth Wing is about Violet, who goes to she's supposed to go to the Scribe Quadrant to learn to be a scribe, but her mother decides at the last minute, nope, Sorrengails go to the Dragon Quadrant and go to be Dragon Riders, and so she sends her daughter to the Dragon Riders to be trained. And yeah, the Dragon School is pretty deadly, like most, it's like a third of them actually survive Dragon Riding School, and it's really, really brutal, like it's horribly brutal. And Violet's mum, Lilith Sorrengail, is a general, and so she says, no, Sorrengails, we are Dragon Riders. Despite the fact that her whole life Violet has trained to be a scribe, and Violet also has EDS. It's not named as EDS, but it's confirmed as EDS by the author, who also has EDS. And Iron Flame kind of takes up a notch when she goes into her second year at the school, and there are also other things happening. There was a rebellion years ago, and the children of that rebellion are in school with her, and it is a good fun time. It's not like overly complicated, although you should see people are getting like Swifty level, like detective, to figure out what's going on. There's so many theories kicking about Iron Flame and Fourth Wing and what's going to happen, and there's a few things that Rebecca Yarros has actually like downright confirmed, just to be like, no, like the throne scene in this book, Rebecca has confirmed, was to make a statement to the audience, to us as the reader, that there will not be a love triangle, and thank you for that, Rebecca. Like, they're in, like, this romance is endgame, and that's it. And I don't want to say who, because, yeah, I'm going to stop talking because I don't want to spoil this for anybody. If you like fantasy, if you're like a deep fantasy lover, I don't know if you like this. Me, as someone who doesn't really read fantasy, I love this. I love the EDS representation in it. I have EDS myself. I have the same type of EDS as Violet and as Rebecca, and personally, I enjoy the rep. I know there are some people who don't like it because they see it as another disabled person overcomes, but I don't see it that way. For me, it's disabled person adapts, and like even like everything about this is about adapting, like adapting your surroundings, adapting the way you do things, and pacing and adapting are the only ways that we can really work as disabled people. Like things need to adapt for you to be able to do things, and that is kind of what this book's about. Yeah, she kind of has to overcome, but it's like overcome or die. It's not like overcome so you can be a better person. It's overcome or die, and Violet's like, well, I'm not dying today, bitch. And I totally get it. Like, there are things that you find yourself able to do if you're in a life or death situation that you would not be able to do. And disabled people are no different. But anyway, before I'm going to get off my high horse and just continue. Sorry if this has changed at all. I just knocked my entire desk and sent several things flying, including this. Ed and Andy here. Because of this, I totally forgot about a book, which is Collide, and I really enjoyed this book. I think I said in my vlog that it was like Icebreaker, but needed a few tweaks to be at Icebreaker level for me. It's about a student who's a hockey player, who's captain of the hockey team, who gets in trouble because he takes the blame for stuff that the actual team have done, and then he has to be the subject of the female main character's dissertation, and she is a sports psychology major, and she's doing a sort of study on burnout in athletes, and so they have to kind of work together even though they don't like each other. Like, she hates hockey on principle because her dad's a hockey player, and he basically didn't want her to be born because he thought it would affect his career, and then her mum became like a full-time single mum so that he could have his career, and she's always like, the main character's always felt the brunt of that, and so she does not like hockey. She really, really hates hockey, so she hates the player just on principle, and he needs everybody to like him. Like, he needs everybody to like him, so he's like determined like she's gonna like him. And yeah, like, it's very, like I say, if you've read Icebreaker, this is very, very similar. The characters are, like, the two main characters are obviously different. I'm thinking right now, like, but she really does remind me of Aurora in so many ways. But, is it Rory? No, it's not Aurora. It's Aurora's in Wildfire. I forgot he's in. Anyway, I mean, the main character in Icebreaker, I can't believe I didn't look this up. But anyway, she reminds me of her. It's very similar. Like I said, I really liked it, and I definitely recommend it. It's on KU. It is indie published. It's published by the author. So please do just pop onto your KU account, go read it. I really do recommend it. And for somebody who's published it on their own, I think it's incredible, if I'm being honest. But yeah, next up I read Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldree, this beautiful edition from Waterstones. And this was one of my most anticipated books of the year because Legends and Lattes was just incredible. I loved it so much. I'm totally on the hype train for Legends and Lattes, so I was totally on the hype train for this, but I didn't know how it could match up to Legends and Lattes, and in some ways it didn't. Like, this became a lot more fantasy than the coziness. That, like, this has a lot more fantasy elements than the other one, and it lost me a little bit in that. Like, I wasn't, some of the setup and some of the magic and some of the, like, new creatures and things like that, I just wasn't on board with, like, learning. I kind of glazed over a bit. But when she was in the bookshop, that's when I really loved it. Like, I love the way that Travis Baldree writes, and I love the characters, but getting into that fantasy world is just not for me. I am looking forward to having more stories from Viv. Like, there's a bit at the end of this where I'm like, oh, where are we going with this? And I kind of hope we do go forward with that. This was a very, very, like, to go forward with it, this was very necessary. And I think this one needs for me to do a reread to truly appreciate it. The first time was kind of like getting my bearings, and I think the second time is going to be actually enjoying it. But basically Viv makes a dumb mistake and is injured and is put in this town called Muck, I think it was called. I'm just pulling stuff. Murk. I missed an R. Murk, which is a seaside town, and while she's there and staying at this inn while she's injured, she finds this bookshop and she goes in and it's a mess, and she befriends the ratkin that is the owner of the bookshop, kind of, and the owner of the bakery along the way. And she decides to try and hit, like, she needs a project, she needs something to do. Viv gets bored easily and she can't really do much because she's injured, and so they start, like, putting back together this bookshop, changing things, cleaning it, building new bits. Like, it's just such a nice story. And then on the back of that there is the sort of spillover from the quest where Viv got hurt, and there's this necromancer that Viv was hunting, and, like, it starts to look like that she's hunting Viv now. And so that all comes to a head and everything. That's the bit that I wasn't so keen on. The bookshop stuff, top tier, loved it. So yeah, if you enjoyed Legends and Lattes, I would definitely read this. If you enjoy fantasy more than the cozy fantasy, I think you'll like this. Again, for me, I just prefer Legends and Lattes at the moment. Next, I read The Book of Lost Names by Kirsten Harmel. This is about our main character, Eva, who's forced to flee Paris with her mother after the Nazis start rounding up Jewish people in Paris after they have occupied. And they escape to this little town where they only manage to get out of Paris because Eva forges some documents for them. And when the woman at the B&B type thing that they end up staying with realises that they're forged, she passes Eva's details on to the local priest, who is kind of helping to run this ring where they get false documents for Jewish children and Jewish families and get them the heck out of Dodge into Switzerland where they can be safe. And so she ends up joining this enterprise to forge these documents to get these children and families across the border into Switzerland and away from the Germans and the Nazis. And she also finds community there. The whole time she's trying to free her father from, he's been taken to Auschwitz, and her mother is just, her mother in this, I cannot stand. She is so selfish. Like, she blames Eva for her father being taken. So if we'd been with him, we would all be together. It's your fault. You made me run. You brought me here. You're the reason he's been sent away to this guy. And it's just like, fine, off you pop. Go and ask if you can visit them and see what happens. Like, all she's done is trying to keep her mum safe and keep them alive and do what her father asked, which is look after her mum. And her mum is calling her, like, selfish and icing her out, and honestly, her mum just drives me out the wall. But yeah. And then obviously everything goes wrong and they are discovered and she has to run. And it's just, oh, I love this book. The ending of this book broke my heart. It got a little bit letters to Juliet and it just broke my heart. But I loved it so much. Again, did not think I was going to enjoy this book as much as I did, but oh my god, I loved this so much. Then we hit the first book that I DNF'd, and that is Delayed Raise of a Star by Amanda Lee Coe, and this follows 3 actresses through Hollywood's golden age. I just couldn't find myself caring about these characters. They were so vapid, and I know a lot of it was meant to be like, that was meant to be the point, it's about Hollywood and it's about that whole thing. It was like, I understand now what people don't like about Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones and the Six, because this gave me those vibes, but not enough character work that I enjoyed it. I literally fell asleep listening to the audiobook and could not care enough to go back. I got about 100 pages into this and it was again one of those books where I just felt like I couldn't get attached to the characters. I don't know what it is. Like, I'm really, really, really big on character work and I just could not get myself attached to these characters, so unfortunately I DNF'd it. And then, because of course I had to be 2 in a row, I then DNF'd Entangled Life by Marilyn Sheldrake. This again was an unfortunate DNF. I even listened to the audiobook thinking it would help me push through, but this book was really like a stepped back memoir rather than a book about fungi. I wanted from this book a non-fiction book that was going to teach me something about fungi. What I got was Marilyn Sheldrake traipsing through the forest trying to find fungi. Oh no, none there, let's move on. Oh wait, no, that's not what we're looking for. Oh look, there's like, we'll go for truffle hunting with some dogs. The only thing I cared about was the dogs. I don't want to follow you through the forest. Not unless you're giving me something interesting to read. And this just could not hold my attention. It just did not hold my attention. I wanted so much more from this book than I got. So unfortunately, again, about 100 pages in, I DNF'd it. And then we went back to World War II, because there are a lot of World War II historical fictions on my TBR for when I got lost in a romance hole and put all my historical fiction to the side. Sorry, my hair is just really annoying me right now. But next, I read The Liberation by Kate Furnivall. I'd already read a Kate Furnivall book previously and really enjoyed it, so I knew I was going to love this. And honestly, at the beginning, I did not think I was going to like this book, but I ended up actually really enjoying it. So this is about Italy post-liberation. So not even necessarily liberation. So Italy was on the side of the Germans during World War II, and after the war ended, the Americans and Brits came to Italy to kind of restore order before heading back to their own countries. And this follows, we've got the American officer who is trying to find, his job is to find art that was stolen from like churches and private collections and things like that and return it to its rightful owners. And we've also got our main character, Katerina, whose father was a master craftsman, a master woodworker, who was involved in the theft of these items. She doesn't want to believe it, and so she tries to clear her father's name. So this is kind of like World War II-esque meets heist book meets mystery book, and it was quite interesting. Like, it made me kind of want a prequel, if that makes sense. And so they're trying to figure out, she's trying to clear her father's name, he's trying to figure out what's happened, and there are people who do not want them to figure out the truth. There's someone who is betraying them in their midst, and I genuinely thought I knew who it was, and it was totally, I went down the garden path that she led me down, and I totally believed it. I really, really enjoyed this one. I did not think I was going to enjoy this the way I did, because it was more of a heist-esque novel than it was a historical fiction. But yeah, no, I ended up really, really enjoying this, and I'm so glad I picked it up. And the last thing that I completed during the month of November was A Natural Death by Patricia Cornwell. This is a book that we all know I looked forward to from the second it was released. I pre-ordered it and it did not do me wrong. This is a book about 2 campers who are found in this really remote, kind of toxic part of the woods. Like, there's old gold mines and stuff, and they use like cyanide and stuff to extract gold. So this wood's kind of like a no-go area in Virginia, and they are found so badly destroyed that they are almost unrecognisable as people. And of course Scarpetta gets involved because it is a national security risk, and the Secret Service whisk her off to help with this. Unfortunately, while they're there, Marino discovers Bigfoot footprints, and so it's like it's definitely not been Bigfoot, but also who the hell could have done this? And so they're working with Lucy and Marino and other people in the Secret Service to kind of figure out what's going on. This one is a very slow-paced novel. It's not as dense as the previous Scarpetta books. Like, what happens in this book would have happened in the first like third to a half of any of the previous books. So she's definitely like leaning back in her writing a little bit, which I think she's taken that from feedback. Like, she's taken that from feedback, as she said in an interview with the BBC. Like, people don't really want some of the grotesque stuff that she was writing before, and to me it's not grotesque because I studied forensics and so this is my bread and butter. But for the like general person, it is quite grotesque. Like, she will tell you what happens to her in an autopsy, and she knows because she's done it. If she writes about it, she has done it, or she's researched it to the nth degree. And so yeah, this one's not quite as gruesome, which fine, fair enough. But the pulling in of the Bigfoot legend, it was just really, really cool. Again, another absolute hit from British Cornwall, and I cannot wait for the next one because we have an adversary back from the past to haunt us. And the emotional roller coaster this book took me through is unreal. And of course it wasn't Bigfoot that killed them. This is not a cryptid book. That was just a fun little like sprinkle in there. So those are all the books that I read in November or DNF'd. Like I said, I am kind of partially the way through Ordinary Monsters. Really enjoying it so far, but I will talk about that more in my wrap up and in my vlogs. But thank you so much for staying with me through this. It's taken a little while to film, and hopefully it's not going to be too long for you, but I did talk about a fair few books. If you want to let me know you were here but don't want to write a comment, if there's some kind of foot based emoji for the Bigfoot, just leave it in there, or some creature style, or even just a tree, the forest, whatever is there, just pop it down in the comments. Excuse my mouth because, like I say, I've got an ulcer on the side of my tongue and I'm not able to talk properly. Yeah, thanks very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!